everybody, welcome to another episode of Murphy's Law. I'm Eric Murphy, and with me today is Jenna Belk. Hey, Jenna, how's it going?
Hey, pretty good. How are you?
Oh, doing well. So, pleasantries aside, this is the second recording of this episode. Mm-hmm. We finished the first.
And then got to talking.
And I pulled the clips for this, and I wanted to go over kind of how things were going in earlier episodes. And I don't mean earlier episodes for us. I mean like early, like old episodes of the Atheist Experience from 10 plus years ago. Mm-hmm. And there was a caller who had a kind of a common thing that a lot of Christians say. And we talked about it, and I realized that it is just not as good of an example as we had originally indicated. And it felt so strong that I was like, no, can we please do this again? Because I now have an entirely different take. So for those of you who want to watch the not good version,
I think it's good.
Well, it's a great conversation, but the way we talked about it didn't point out some really important things. If you want to watch that version, it's going to be available for patrons only. So I'm going to be, it should be up on Patreon by now. Okay, but first, before we dive into the call and start talking about it, Jenna, we missed you.
Aww,
I'm so happy to see you. Yes, we are in the same quarantine group. Mm-hmm. It just happens to be that our entire quarantine group of 6 are all YouTubers.
Yes.
So that's really beneficial. I'm really happy about that. Since you've been on here, you started another show.
I have.
What is that called?
It's the Ethan and Jenna Show. Mm-hmm. Your friendly neighborhood atheist, Ethan, Michael, and I have started a show where we're just basically peers, where we talk about certain things that we think are important that need to be talked about.
Okay.
And mostly it's a call-in show. So we'll bring up a topic and have people call in and share their experiences. Most importantly, we want to give people an opportunity to be heard. Nice. And then we kind of elaborate with our own experiences and sometimes offer advice if asked or
I like whatever. That. That's a very personal thing. So since it's a call-in show, if you want to watch, I recommend watching live because then you can interact and also you can call in. So if people want to watch and call in, what time is that show on?
That is on at 11 a.m. Central every Sunday.
Okay.
And to be honest, I haven't memorized the number yet. I just know it's like 758 listen or something. 458 listen. Either way, it'll be posted.
I'll pop the link to that and the number in the details for this video.
Right.
And you pulled double duty last weekend when you were on Atheist Experience and that show. Mm-hmm. So cheers. I'm so happy that you're back. All right. Now that we've got that stuff aside, let's dive into the call so that we have some time to talk about it. I'm just going to dive right into what the caller says. So we're going to just skip the intros and dive right in.
Yeah. You can think like, well, if I ain't got nobody to answer to, I can do whatever the hell I want to do.
If I've got nobody to answer to, I can do whatever I want. Yeah. So
technically,
well, the funny thing is, I think a big theme throughout all of this is non-sequiturs. So,
and I just learned what a non-sequitur is.
And when you hear it, you're like, oh, I've always been able to recognize it. I see when something doesn't follow from. And so for those people who don't know what it is, a non-sequitur is a series of statements or two statements or whatever that don't logically follow from each other. So my refrigerator is broken. I wonder when I'll be able to, go get my car taken care of. They have nothing to do with one another. So if there is no God, you could do whatever you want. No. If there is no God, right? So
doesn't follow.
No, because there are a lot of implications. There are a lot of assumptions that he's bringing to the table. And because those assumptions are so often brought to the table, the hosts take off and they're like, oh, we're carrying those assumptions, but they don't challenge them because they already have those assumptions built in their head. The assumptions are God is being viewed as the ultimate moral lawgiver. Right. And that when you're saying you're doing whatever you want, what you're talking about is all of these laws that God gives, and you're not compelled to follow those laws if there is no God. None of that was said.
Yeah.
None of it. But everybody took that moving forward. but it doesn't follow. And so
interesting. I thought this is funny. I thought oh my God. I thought that you wanted to redo this because of the non sequitur that he was using.
Oh, I am. Yes. Both. They were talking past each other. That's why I wanted to redo this episode.
Holy crap. I only caught the first half.
I know.
So, okay. I say that I learned what a non sequitur is.
No, but
I'm still learning what a non sequitur is.
You apply and apply and apply and apply and apply. And you get there. So first off, there are some good things in here. It's not all bad, obviously. And again, we're being hypercritical, but that's because we're hosts and we want to be the best hosts possible. And so we want to go back over it and go, how can we do this better?
How can we change what we're doing to do it better? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And
so not criticizing ourselves or anyone. We're just critiquing. I think criticizing and critiquing are different.
I agree. I criticize myself. But other people...
Well, we'll work on that separately.
Fair enough. So the first person that we're going to see, the first host, is Martin Wagner. I haven't gotten the chance to meet the guy, but I hope someday too. I mean, he seemed like he was pretty nice.
Did he still come by?
Not when I was there. So, but...
If there isn't a God, well, then maybe that must mean you have no one to answer to, and therefore you have no limitations on your behavior. You can do whatever you want.
That was a good clarification.
Yep, he repeated it back to see if that's what the caller was talking about. And we still have those assumptions built in now.
Right.
But we're starting to kind of weed some out.
Well, he's clear. He's saying, is this what you're saying?
Exactly.
Right, which is good. Yeah.
And so what Martin decides to do is he decides to give a point that might be against this. And I'm going to give the point, and then I'd love to talk about it a little bit. Okay. So here's the point that Martin gives.
If that ultimate authority, or God, or what have you, one day said, well, I declare it to be morally right and for everyone to kill their own children, and so I command you to do this, well, would it be the right thing to do?
Declarations, commands.
Morals weren't talked about by the caller. Yeah.
Assumptions.
Lawgiver.
Right.
The caller didn't say lawgiver. All of those things were assumptions built in. Now, they may be true, but when you carry those assumptions in, you might be getting convinced by something because of its baggage and not necessarily because it logically holds up.
Okay.
And so when this caller calls in, does he want to convince them? Maybe. I think that the idea of appealing to the consequence of I think he genuinely thinks that if there's no, God to give laws, then there's no reason to follow them.
Probably. Because in his mind there are laws, and so it doesn't matter what would be. So that's what I used to think. Hypotheticals don't matter because they're not true. Right? That's how I thought. They just don't matter. So you can say whatever you want in a hypothetical. You can say I would kill my children. It doesn't matter because it's a hypothetical.
And actually, that's what the caller does. So he dives in and responds.
If he would have come to me personally and tell me something like that, I'd do it hands down.
And then he goes on to clarify, but God wouldn't do that.
Right. That's a thing.
And so
I can say it in a hypothetical.
Yeah. And what's interesting is this is definitely a kitchen table conversation. This is something that you can imagine people having with family members and things like that. But are we moving forward? Are we giving people tools that are helping them discuss these things? I think this can be used to discuss this.
Totally.
But you need to have a clear understanding of where these are. This caller is calling in because he believes that God is the moral lawgiver. This person believes in objective morals. And so when Martin is giving his example, he's giving an example of, okay, would it still be morally correct for this case? But all of that is happening under the water. All of it is happening built in. There's this sub-conversation underneath that they're having that people are following along with, but maybe not everybody. And it starts to bleed through. And so you have these clarifying questions. You have repeating things back to them to make sure that it's correct. But all along the way, I think we need to do a better job of making sure that we're clear about things and aren't carrying so many assumptions in. Because I honestly think that Martin's response would have made absolutely no sense to somebody who didn't have those assumptions. If somebody didn't assume that God was the moral lawgiver and Martin were to talk about killing your son, that would make absolutely no sense.
True.
It just wouldn't. You know, you'd be able to do whatever you want. What does that even mean? Does that mean you can fly? Does that mean you can teleport or live forever? No.
Right.
So you obviously
What do you mean when you say that? Yeah.
Exactly.
You can do whatever you want? Like, that's assuming you can't.
Yeah. So and if God is the one keeping you. So this caller said, if there's no God, you can do whatever you want. Does that mean that I can breathe underwater if there's no God?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so all of
Listen
those are
to what
built
they're
in.
saying.
Exactly.
Instead of respond to the prepare your response to the pre-prepared statement.
Exactly. Because
I see.
they're both responding to each other's baggage. They're both responding to each other's assumptions.
It's.
But if Martin were to ask, does that mean I could breathe underwater? Then
that might make him take a step back and rethink what he said.
And clarify.
And actually get down to what he's trying to say.
Exactly. Now,
charitable listening.
Charitable listening, and also holding them accountable. You know, and
which
so
they're good at that.
Definitely. And
great at that.
And actually in this call, when this caller says, yeah, no, I would absolutely kill my kid. It does take me back to, and I know we talked about this in the episode that's going to go up for patrons. But when I was a Christian, we would, kind of hold this, well, if, someone were to put a gun to my head and ask me to renounce God, I would let them kill me. And if the end time comes and they want to put the mark of the beast on me, then I would rather die. I'd be part of the resistance. I'd be part of this persecuted group that has to be,
they don't think that'll happen. And that's why they can say that.
I don't think it's that they don't think it'll happen. I think that it is an example of brainwashing. You actually used that. You actually said that in the last time we recorded it. And I agree with you. I think it is brainwashing because I think it's the same reason why people can find the courage to strap bombs to themselves. And
that's true. No. So, you're right. So it's not that they haven't thought about it. And when it comes down to it, they wouldn't do it because that's probably what other people listening to this are assuming would happen.
Right.
But what they don't realize is that the Twin Towers fell.
Yeah. People hype themselves up to that place.
More than that.
Yeah.
The Holocaust happened.
Yeah.
Slavery happened. This all happened. Because we didn't believe something would happen.
Well, I don't think it's because we didn't believe. It's because we talked ourselves into it. We hyped ourselves up and justified it. I think
it was a combination of things. Some people looked away.
Absolutely.
And then some people were saying things and not really thinking about them. And then,
well, I mean, if you do follow that, if God is this moral lawgiver and God changes the law, then you need to change with it if you want to be moral.
Because God said so.
And so if you repeat it to yourself enough, you might talk yourself into it. And there's an entire sub-conversation about, sociopaths and all of that. Ultimately, where the hosts are going with this is, would you feel uncomfortable? Would you internally feel like what you're doing is moral? And here's the part where I can't help but feel cognitive dissonance, in him. I couldn't imagine somebody saying, yeah, I would kill my kid and feel fine with it. I just couldn't.
Actually, I take it back. I can't imagine that. I think.
Who's not a sociopath? Or a psychopath?
Who is brainwashed, though. Brainwashing does things to your brain that equate that.
Fair enough.
Because you're convinced I'm doing this for good reasons. Yeah. And you keep telling yourself that. You start having this bad feeling. Nope, doing this for good reasons.
True enough.
Nope, doing it for good reasons.
And it takes you to weird places. In fact, the hosts, Matt and Martin, are both super, super taken aback by it.
Understandably so.
Yeah.
You do what? You wouldn't do it?
I would do it.
You would do it?
Yes, I would.
Yeah. How nuts is that? In fact, Matt actually repeated it again,
Yeah.
right? Is this really what you mean? Please clarify, right? That is that. By the way, charitably listening, making sure that you're not strawmanning the person.
Right.
If this authority figure that you worship were to tell you to do that, you would do it and think that it was good.
I won't think twice of it. Yes, I would do it.
He says it again.
You can just hear the incredulity dripping from Matt at this point. He's like, "Are you serious?"
Yeah.
And so the end that I took, because they kept talking after the call ended, and actually Matt hung up on the caller, but beforehand, Matt actually had a response to this line of thinking.
Well, then you have sacrificed your humanity, your self-respect, your decency, and your moral authority.
That needs to be heard.
Yeah,
by those people.
Absolutely. I think that going back to the beginning of this, this happening at kitchen tables, if someone says God is the moral lawgiver, you need to follow what God is saying. I think a great way to dig down is going, okay, so are you responsible for your actions? Because if you're
maybe not that direct at a kitchen table discussion, because you're imagining atheists and theists, right? This is a common problem where we have atheists and theists in a household together, and there's already tension there.
Sure.
Just for that. And then somebody says something like that, and you want to question them.
Sure. So
at a kitchen table, these are for people you know well, that you have a history with, that it can be easy to trigger somebody. So I think you have to be much more careful.
Diplomatic?
Yes. Not like that.
Well, but there's the Euthyphro dilemma, which is kind of what that harkens back to. And are you being good because God tells you to? Because if you are, then you're a robot. You are not acting as sheep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we talked about it in the last time we recorded. Yeah, you're just following along. I still have no idea what your moral views are, because you're just following what God said. Or are you doing it, or did God command it because it is moral? Does morality exist outside of God? In which case you don't need God. And I think that
that's the bigger question.
Exactly. And I think that
for
really,
that guy. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. No, you're right. And I think that boils down to it is somebody says, well, without God, you could do anything. That carries with it all of this baggage, all of these assumptions. And
it makes people feel powerful and like they really can do anything. But then you want to clarify what anything is.
Yeah. Because you can't breathe underwater.
Right. Yes. Can't fly. Exactly.
And so do we have a great example of arguments? I don't think so. Because you have non-sequiturs coming both ways. The hosts gave a non-sequitur. They brought up the Abraham and Isaac. Would you kill your child? Example.
Right. Assuming that it's the Abrahamic God.
Right. But here's the assumption. If you could show that Abraham and Isaac, that whole, whatever conclusion you come to, how is that related to the statement? If there is no God, you could do whatever you want.
Yeah, it is a non sequitur.
It doesn't logically follow. It's a conversation in the realm of morals and ethics, and it absolutely does tie together when you go into them.
But it's not a syllogism.
Yeah, it's not. And so
I'm learning so much.
Yeah. And so as hosts, I kind of want to take that as a learning experience and go, okay, was that a good call? Yes. Did it feel good? And did it have a lot of things that people can learn?
Right.
Yes. But I want to do a better job of clarifying how those things are related and unboxing some of those assumptions so that people can see exactly how we get there. And the conclusion that Matt gave was perfect. It absolutely was. Because
it was honest and straightforward, and it wasn't offensive.
No, because I think it's speaking to the idea, not the person.
Right.
If you have done that, you have forfeited your humanity.
Right.
And I entirely agree.
Yep.
So it's a mixed bag, and that's what we get to do as hosts is go back and look and try and figure out how we can move forward. And so we're going to be taking these examples and we're going to be applying them as we go into the future.
And since we're quarantining all together, we'll be able to do this a little more often.
Yes, absolutely. I'm glad that you're going to be doing your quarantine, like that you're going to be doing your work stuff while I'm off of work. So we can record, which is amazing.
Yeah.
So Jenna, thank you so much. It's already been 20 minutes.
Oh my God. That
for
flew.
another. I know. I have to get ready for work. So I'm going to put the links to everything that you do. Jenna is amazing. If you haven't seen her channel, you absolutely should. Incredible interviews. I'm excited about the call-in show that you've got going on. So thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Click here to subscribe. Click up above Jenna if you want to support me on Patreon. Patrons get early access, and they're actually going to get the earlier version of this show as well as bonus content. Click here if you want to watch whatever it is that YouTube thinks you want to watch next. Take care. See you next time.